them and its management. Attorney Nathaniel Lee, a lawyer with credibility, success, and experience, representing people in hundreds of jury trials, Nathaniel Lee is who you want by your side in the courtroom. You've seen the rest, now hire the best. Contact Lee, Purcell, and Feigley today. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. Thank you for joining our show again today. For all our audience, we appreciate your loyalty. We're in troubled times now, but to assist today, of course, we have our superstar panel with the crack research analyst, attorney Vanita Banks, Milton Grimes, and of course, Marlon Primes. And we have a lot of subjects to cover today. And don't forget, we'll call in show. And you can always go to our website and our chat box, and you can get the call-in number for today. But to start us off, good morning, everyone. How you doing?
Good morning, Nate.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning.
Let's talk. There are people saying that DEI is dead, that it's on its last grave. But I think we need to make the argument today as to why we must keep this DEI. Who want to start off with comparing the DEI and why it's necessary?
Well, it's necessary because you want to give everyone a fair chance. You know, we have to understand the not so distant past. There were just people that were qualified but just didn't get the opportunities. I tell the story about someone that was a student at our flagship university, Ohio State, and the dean basically came to him and the other African American students and said, "Hey, I'm going to be honest with you, there's no opportunity out there." The same thing when we talk about Sandra Day O'Connor. She was one of the top students in her class, but there was no opportunities for her. And then finally, I'll mention my example in terms of Georgetown Law School. They started going to a blind grading system where the teacher would not know who the student was until the grades were submitted. And then suddenly everyone started grading on.
Here's the argument.
So it's just beneficial.
Well,
cities that have done it have prospered, like Atlanta and other cities. So go ahead.
Well, here's the statistic, folks. For all the people in our audience, there's something you need to know as to why this is necessary. Everybody will concede that probably one of the most racially diverse cities in the South is Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia, gross domestic product is $471 billion. Yeah. The combined domestic, the state of Mississippi and Alabama is less than Atlanta, the city of Atlanta. And so the two wealthiest states in the country is New York and California, the most racially diverse state. And so when you look at that from an economic standpoint, we continue to strive to promote diversity because it makes sense economically. But
we also know there's several studies, the McKinsey study. Can you hear me? There's several studies, including a recent McKinsey studies, and there have been all kinds of studies regarding the benefits of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And we find that more ethnically diverse.
What are your thoughts?
Can you hear me?
Thoughts about this?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Nathaniel, Marlon, Milton, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Vanita.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. I think Nathaniel just wanted you to go ahead on.
Okay. I was hearing some distortion, but we find that more ethnically and gender diverse workplaces achieve better results in terms of profit. And we also know that diversity, equity, and inclusion, its purpose was always to increase access to corporate jobs and federal contracts, for example. The goal of diversity, equity, and inclusion was never to state that unqualified candidates gain access to jobs. And Marlon, you're absolutely right. So many studies have been performed where if you take the name, for example, off of an application for employment, the likelihood is that more diverse candidates will be selected as opposed to when their names are on that resume and those names may um, demonstrate a particular ethnicity.
You know, I'm sorry, when Nate asked that question, I immediately thought back to something I recently read in a book called The Barn. It's about much background. It's about Emmett Till's killing down there in Mississippi and 1954 Brown versus Education, the Board of Education, and how the Southern whites were saying, well, we can't just integrate these schools because they want to do, the Negroes want to do is get in here and have sex with the white girls. And that's the purpose of this integration thing. So they just refused to accept it. And finally, when Thurgood Marshall stood up and said, we're going to have integration because that is the law, they asked, what are you going to do with the Negroes who are not up to par with the 5th grade or the 7th grade where they're going to be coming to school with white folks? And he said, that's an easy answer. We're going to put the smart whites with the smart Negroes. And we're going to put the dumb whites with the dumb Negroes. And we got to get this integration because otherwise it's not going to be an equal education. They just did an analysis saying that $256 were paid for each white student in their school system, and only $3 was the cost of a black student in their school system. And that would never equal out. So here we have diversity, I think, is necessary for the benefit of everybody, including whites. So we won't get the level of integration that we deserve to have unless the law requires it. That's how I feel about this.
Well, I think Nathaniel brings up an excellent point in terms of the Social Security Trust Fund that's scheduled to go bankrupt in the early 2030s. So we need as many people included in our workforce as possible. And history has shown that, if there are not, affirmative steps taken, if there's not efforts to interview a diverse workforce, you're not going to get that diverse workforce. And as a consequence, certain people are going to be left out of society.
That's
And
why the school board example.
And the president, as you know, signed an order in his first day of office directing federal agencies to terminate all equity-related grants or contracts. And he signed a follow-up order requiring federal contractors to certify that they do not promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he called those programs illegal. And that's just absolutely not true. In fact, his executive order is illegal. And a federal judge just this week um, issued a preliminary injunction blocking the administration from terminating or changing federal contracts that they consider to be um, equity related. And he found that those orders likely violate the Constitution, including free speech rights. And so that we're seeing the courts step up to block some of these blatantly illegal executive orders.
And I think they're absolutely right because we live in a government that is not a king. You have to have your legislative branch, your executive branch. You just cannot willy nilly by executive fiat decertify civil rights statutes. And so that's kind of part of the problem. That's why the president's been running into problems with the court. You can't basically say that, hey, you cannot enact measures that have been passed by Congress. You have to go through the legislative process before you can take the actions that the president is trying to take. So that is certainly problematic. And hopefully, the courts will continue to see it that way as these cases kind of go through the judicial system.
Well, this man demonstrated yesterday, if no other time, that he thinks he is a king and he can do what he wants to in this office, didn't he?
We saw one of the worst displays of behavior yesterday in how President Zelensky was treated at the White House. But he stood up to him, right? He stood right up and asserted himself first as a man, right? And secondly, as a leader of his country, and he did not back down. One of the worst displays of outrageous behavior that we, have seen. As I was hearing, as the president was talking this week, before the President Zelensky's visit to the White House, I was thinking, I don't think that's going to go so well.
Well, I think diversity, I won't say is small, but what happened yesterday probably is in the forefront of what is important with what's happening with the administration and their position on things. It just looks bad for the future.
I could envision any, and I'm going out on a limb, person of color or woman, and you saw how he treated the Maine governor earlier, was that this week or next week? But to say you're in no position, you're in a very bad position, you don't have the cards, and and Zelensky responded back, well, this is not a card game. To be sitting there, pointing in the face of President Zelensky, just sitting there pointing, and then JD Vance pointing, showing just a flagrant display of disrespect. It was just despicable. But then to hear certain commentators, on the nightly news programs talk about how President Zelensky was disrespectful in his behavior in the White House, and talking about how he was dressed. It was just a sad day.
He didn't have on a baseball cap, so he wasn't dressed properly maybe for those people. But
Go ahead.
No, it was just one of the worst scenes I've ever seen, and especially when the vice president steps up and says, "You haven't thanked us." It just got out of hand.
And that's the attitude of superiority.
Yeah.
That was just flagrant yesterday.
Yeah. That was like mama scolding you and said you didn't say thank you, boy.
But not only that, it just reverses decades of U.S. policy of containment.
Did you show what you did? I'm sorry.
That's the important point. That's an excellent, important point, Marlon, as well. And again, I was thinking this cannot go well, and Zelensky was trying to ensure that if he's going to give up, rights, mineral rights, then he wants security for that. And as we know, Putin and others were celebrating yesterday. This is exactly what they want to see.
Well, is a radical departure from American exceptionalism for sure. For example, nowhere in our history has a president basically engaged in legal blackmail with a foreign country that's not.
You're
froze.
frozen.
The idea that
You're
you
freezing,
turn
mate.
over all your resources to us, like, it's insulting. The whole notion of what they're,
You're
I'm
freezing.
sorry, what you say?
You're
The
freezing.
whole notion of what they're attempting to do. I'm freezing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you may need to turn off your video.
You've
Okay.
got a bad connection this morning.
Probably bandwidth. You need to
Yeah.
turn off your video.
And ordering President Zelensky out of the White House and having the nerve to say that Putin wants peace and Zelensky doesn't, and that he wants to keep fighting, and that he's fomenting World War II, just totally despicable. And then having the Russian news service in the Oval Office, but yet he's barred the US AP service in the office because they won't recognize the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. I mean, this is bullying, and we just saw bullying in its most flagrant form in the Oval Office yesterday.
Yeah, and it's not in everybody's best interest because if you're enabling Putin, what's he going to do next? Is he going to go to Poland? Is he going to go to other countries in Eastern Europe? The policy of the United States has always been containment. And so basically what you're doing is, he's doing is going against decades of policy. And there have been, billions of dollars that America has spent over the decades on this policy. And all of a sudden now you're taking Putin's side and making statements that are obviously not true, that somehow Ukraine started the war when everyone knows that this is a war that was started by Russia.
He's going against decades of alliances with the United States and the European powers. I don't know why any person would think that's a wise position to take.
Well, it's a very dangerous position because you're enabling somebody that has, shown that he has no concern for his citizens. He has no concern for human rights, and to enable someone like that, it puts everybody at risk. The NATO alliance, people that have fought and died to make sure that there's, democracy there. So it's very, very a troubling development.
We have a caller. Caller, can you unmute and take your question?
This is Pierre.
Good morning, Pierre.
Good morning.
Okay. Oh, good morning, everybody. I have my opinions on Ukraine, especially, and it's a history lesson going back to 2014. We don't have clean hands in Ukraine, but not much time for the history lesson. We made certain representations to the Russians about the expansion of NATO, and then we just went ahead and violated them, and we're pushing up against their border. And I never saw the wisdom in that, not irrespective of what went on yesterday in the White House. To me, pushing up NATO countries against the Russian border was never a good idea. But what I wanted to call in and talk about, I've got a charge filed at the NLRB and one at the EEOC. And my concern is, have those agencies, they were never good at, in the past, at, in my opinion, at resolving matters for individuals. But my concern is, have those agencies been ordered to, slow walk, go slow on charges filed by people? Because they're probably going to start getting a lot of charges, especially with this end of DEI and all of this across the country. And these employers feel more emboldened now to go ahead and violate people's rights under civil rights laws. That's my concern. And I was just wondering what you guys thought about that. And, you know, I always try to include Milton, finding out what's going on out there on the West Coast with respect to employment law and all of that. So that's one of my big concerns. And I'll get off the radio, but yeah, it's not going to be good.
Well, I would answer that in saying I have not kept up with the employment law situation on the West Coast. I think it is as threatened as any other employments throughout the nation with this president and his fine and of people all across the country.
Well, I think
Well,
you
you
have
know, Black. Go ahead.
No, I think you have a legitimate basis of worrying. I clerked at the National Labor Relations Board and have had matters before the EEOC. And those of us that have practiced in front of those agencies know that they've always had a problem in terms of just having a correct amount of personnel and the length of time it takes to get cases processed. So what the president did is he basically cut funding for a lot of these civil rights organizations that investigate claims of discrimination. And I think you're absolutely right that it's going to send the wrong message to employers that, hey, if I just wave an employee out and it's going to take so long to get a claim through the process, a lot of people will give up. So it's something to really be concerned about. Because indeed, these cases can take quite a while to get through the process as it is. And so, you know, you're talking about adding 10, 20% of time. And then the other question that Nathaniel can speak to as well is that, you know, a lot of times these cases are contingency fee, or we might be charging a client. So, or someone might be out of a job and we're trying to get them back in a job. And so, you know, it really is important that these cases get through the system expeditiously, and anything that's being done in terms of limiting resources certainly, you know, hurts those that are trying to get justice.
Absolutely, Marlon. And I was hopeful that the judge in the case that I just mentioned stated that the plaintiffs in the case, which include the Baltimore City Council, the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education, the American Association of University Professors, and the Restaurant Opportunities Center United, which represents restaurant workers across the country. I was very hopeful that the judge stated that the plaintiffs in the case had a likelihood of success on the merits of the case, and therefore he halted the enforcement of the president's DEI orders. And the lawyers arguing the case stated that the effect of those orders, they encroach on the power of Congress, who's already allocated these funds, and he's just not a king, and just cannot. He does not have unlimited power, and so hopefully these cases will ultimately be decided in favor of the American people, many who are suffering currently because funds have been halted.
Yeah, without question. It just goes back to just, you know, our basic understanding of our constitutional system. You know, you have three branches of government, and I get it that presidents get frustrated and they want to, have their legacy. And so they'll go ahead and say, I want to do an executive order, but you have to follow the constitutional process. If, you know, money has been appropriated by Congress, it's been passed, you're not going to be able to just say, hey, that money cannot be sent just by executive fiat.
Can't hear you, Nate.
Isn't one of the problems that we're faced with is the possibility that some of the action that these actors are doing is criminality. For example, the Musk deal whereby he got a contract for $400 million from an agency that he supervises now. To me, these are obvious conflicts of interest, and I don't understand why, in plain view, that people are not outraged by this conduct. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I agree, Nate. Nate, you know, people have to understand that there are federal employees uh, doing some of the tasks that Elon Musk is engaging in. They have security clearances, they have background checks, they're subject to ethics rules, and all that's just kind of pushed by the wayside. I mean, he has billions of dollars of contracts, and he's allegedly ferreting out waste and abuse. But who's going to supervise whether his contracts are appropriate? So it raises a lot of very important issues.
Are
Well,
these people that are afraid of losing their position in Congress or political positions that they won't stand up to this man? That many people? How does he get that much fear disseminated throughout Congress?
Well,
well, he
go ahead, Nathaniel.
well he did a strategy that's unprecedented. Uh, he fired everybody who's head of every agency, all the non-political folks, and put political folks in place of people who work for the federal government as citizens that we honor for their service. So now he put in a process that allows one person to become tantamount to a dictatorship. So now we don't have a system in place where we have the checks and balance. He got rid of the inspector generals, department heads. He got rid of the top people in the military. And they're talking about DEI. So they take a 4-star general who got superior knowledge and replace him with an inferior talented person. So it's all across the board. None of these folks, for example, they put in the cabinet measure up to the type of people that was in the Biden-Obama administration. Even the prior Trump administration had better quality individuals. But we weren't looking for professional competence. This is the new DEI. DEI in their mind is people that are just loyal to one person. So the heck with qualification and experience.
But then to weaponize that against others, I mean, is it just me, or are we witnessing before our very eyes a takeover of the American government?
Your eyes are not lying to you, Vanita. You're witnessing it.
Each and every
Yeah,
day. And
yeah.
it appears very intentional, and it's all coming out of Project 2025. And they've been working on this document, this manifesto, this playbook was not just written yesterday. It goes back decades, at least as far back as the Reagan administration, the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, and other authors have been working on this plan for many, many years. And one of the edicts in Project 2025 is just so scary. They have now fired numerous employees with the National Oceanic and Atmosphere Organization, and that's the organization that includes the National Weather Service, where we receive alerts regarding hurricanes, wildfires, tsunamis. That reportedly was done this week as outlined in Project 2025, and many of the long-term officials that were fired have stated that these actions are going to cripple us in terms of, public safety, for example, the maintenance of our oceans. This is getting incredibly scary, colleagues. What do you think?
We got one caller. Hey, caller, you have a question or comment for us today. Go ahead.
I agree with you, Vanita. It's a scary path.
Hi, everyone. I thank you for having me again. This is Renee Schultz, and I enjoy listening to your show every weekend. I have a couple of comments, and then I'm going to let you guys, give me some feedback on that since you have more insight. As far as the Ukraine-Russia situation, what many people don't understand is that Putin always wanted to return Russia back to the old Soviet Union when he felt like it had its greatest power and world power. So that would include eating up Ukraine again, taking over Ukraine and some of the Baltic states. The only thing that was stopping Putin was the American president and plus NATO. And now that we have somebody in the Oval Office who does not mind unleashing that for whatever reason he's doing it, for the grift or whatever, Putin is now unstoppable. And that's what President Zelensky was trying to say to the American people, and that hot mess, whatever that was, to say, that's why he said to Trump was that you will regret this eventually. And what he's saying is you're going to lose all your allies. And Putin is not going to stop with just Ukraine. It's going to go for the other Baltic states as well. And then your power is going to get weaker and weaker. And then the war is going to come to our land and come to the Americans. And who's going to come in and help us like they did in 9/11? Not the NATO countries, not the European countries, because they already feel let down. So this is going to bite us in the long run. And that's all he was trying to say. The other thing was, I don't think this was planned. I think it went sideways. I think they thought that Zelensky was so desperate that he would just go ahead and capitulate anything and tolerate anything that they did to him in front of the world to witness, and they would get their minimal rights. And then Trump could say that, yeah, I brought peace to Ukraine in less than 40 days. But the problem was that Trump is unpredictable and he hit a sensitive nerve. So it went off the rails from there. And why I say I don't think this was planned is because they were supposed to have a press conference after that, Zelensky and Trump and Vance. Well, that was immediately canceled because Trump got so hot and then went off the rails. And so they never had the presser. So they had to cancel it and get rid of everybody and go on from there. The other thing I wanted to talk about.
Well,
Renee, they were to have a press conference. Renee, they were to have a press conference and lunch, and the president kicked Zelensky out of the Oval Office and out of the White House. And I saw this coming because I was reading between the lines that Zelensky had never agreed to the mineral rights. He agreed to consider them, and he had never agreed to exchange those mineral rights unless the United States agreed to maintain security for Ukraine.
Yeah.
So you had those underlying themes going into that meeting. And I didn't think that, to your point, Renee, in the chat box, that Zelensky was going to grovel to the president. And knowing how the president conducts himself, I just knew that this was going to be a train wreck.
Well, it would be
go ahead, I'm sorry.
short-sighted for them to expect Zelensky to acquiesce and bow down to a demand to sign a peace treaty. I think with the number of people he's lost in this war of 3 years and the fight that they have put up, I don't see how they could have thought he would have gone along with that.
Yeah, but that's because you're smart people. We're talking about Trump here. He's not strategic at all. He doesn't think like he's playing, he's not even playing checkers. I don't know what he's playing, hopscotch or something. But he's dealing with people who know this stuff, who are experts. People like you who study it, read, learn, whatever. He's never been that kind of a person. So he went in there thinking, all I have to do, this is what he's thinking. This man is so desperate right now. We got him exactly where he wanted him, because he would have never even considered giving up his minerals before. But he's considering it now. So I know I can go on TV, beat him down, humiliate him. And he wants this so bad that he'll just sit there and take it and then I'll get my rights, and we can have our press conference after this meeting where we can go and talk to everybody how it was all signed and everything was beautiful and I saved the world. That didn't happen. It didn't go according to his script. So that's why I don't think this was planned. I think he thought a different thing in his head. He just thought that Zelensky, I would have never thought that of Zelensky, but that's what he thought. He just thinks that nobody says no to him. And how could this man dying, his people are dying, could say no to him? How can he say no to him, especially on the world stage? He never thought it. Everybody else said no. The Republicans have. They haven't said no, I'm sorry. The Republicans haven't. They've given him everything he wants.
Renee, do you think there's a possibility that Trump is having significant mental decline also?
Of course, everybody does. As we age, we all lose something, a little bit of something. But
well, some of us lose a lot faster than others.
Correct, but he's 80-something. We can't think this man doesn't have some kind of, at least downtime. But he's also, this is the difference. My grandfather, God bless his soul, lived to be 102. He's just as sharp as he was at 50, 60, or 70, I can say. He got memories that went back to his childhood. He was blessed with that, but he worked all his life. He farmed. He was a learner in whatever capacity he was willing to learn, like farming or whatever else he did. Trump has never been an active learner. He doesn't want to learn anything. Never has. People who are wanting to learn while they're still here age better than people who just stop learning or don't want to know anything. So, of course, his decline is a lot worse. Look at him compared to Biden. Biden has a stutter, but Biden understands all of the stuff that he needs to understand as a president. So, yes, I definitely believe that. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist or any of that. I'm just a human being that's living through life, watching what this man is doing. And it doesn't seem right to me. He doesn't seem right to me. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think the thing too is that Trump, his thing is enriching himself, enriching those that are similarly situated to him. Those precious minerals are important because not only are they for microchips, they're also for solar panels, and a lot of those precious metals are in China, so they needed another place to get those precious metals, not only for those items, but also for defense measures as well. So I think he saw this as an opportunity to enrich himself and those similarly situated to him. But I agree that it's unseemly, it's not presidential, and certainly it's something that's not going to protect us in the future when people kind of understand, how he is, conducted himself regarding Ukraine. It's not going to put us in good stead with other individuals and other countries that are in need, because I think that we may turn on them as well.
Oh, this is the last thing I'm going to say about Ukraine, and then I'm going to just make a quick point about DEI. The last thing about the Ukraine situation, what Trump just did yesterday that he does not realize he's done, he's rallied our allies, the NATO groups, all of them to get together and now start to consider China as a bring-in, as somebody that they can turn to protect them from what the U.S. and Russia want to do. And so that's going to be a problem for the United States, because if China gets in it, China's got, billions of people that they can use to, if there happens to be a World War III, quote, World War III, we don't want to be against China and the rest of Europe. Russia's armies are depleted right now. That's why they can't do anything. That's why they're strong arming Zelensky, because their people have died by the hundreds of thousands too, and they don't have a front anymore. That's what everybody is not reading about. They're not paying attention to that. Russia is absolutely weak right now in the Ukraine war. Ukraine has suffered a lot too, but Russia is truly weak. They can't continue this war for the next 2 years. Russia can't. They don't have the people. And they don't have the machinery.
Renee,
so this is why they're trying to get this done.
Renee, you didn't give us an update on New York City mayor situation. What's the latest there now in New York City?
Oh, the latest on that is that basically we're going to have that 3-tier election come November. The primary, I forget which one. And it's nothing happening because the primary doesn't happen until May. People are going to have to squabble it up and figure out who's going to be the one to run against Adams. And the good thing now is that Adams, what's happening with Adams' charges is being held up by a hearing that the Judge Ho has ordered that they do before dismissing his case. So his case is in limbo too. So Trump can't get anything from him because Adams' case is still sitting there and it's waiting for a hearing in front of Judge Ho. And when that hearing happens, then I guess Ho will decide whether he's going to dismiss the case or not. So basically, New York is in peace right now. We're just like, whatever. He's not going to get reelected. So
Renee, I thought that I saw where former Governor Cuomo was thinking about entering the mayor's race there in New York City. Wouldn't he be the likely front runner if he does?
No. He was done with Cuomo. In my opinion, no. They're done with them. They're done with crooked people. They want somebody else. I don't know who that somebody is just yet because there's a lot of front runners that look okay, that look good on paper. But from what I'm hearing from my people, they're not wanting him. I mean, I'm talking about New York City people that I'm in groups with. That's just
Renee,
my viewpoint.
I thought the issue with Cuomo dealt with sexual harassment and things like that. And they were talking about criminal charges and all that kind of went away. And I've not heard anything after he resigned from the governor's office. The whole thing just kind of died.
Well, that was his deal. I get out and things will die. So he got out, things died down, and he didn't have to deal with them in public. I don't know what he did behind the scenes because I was in Texas at the time. But yeah, he got out, things died down. Nobody heard from him anymore. He's teasing about being in a race, but he hasn't officially jumped in. If he was really serious about it, I think he's doing his own, doing his own straw polls and trying to figure out would it be worth him jumping back in. And if he really was sure that he would be the front runner, he would be in by now, but he's not. Because if he got in by now, he would get all the other people who weren't serious about it out of it. He's not serious about it. I would be surprised if he jumped in, but if he did, I don't think he would be the front runner. That's my opinion. And the last thing I'll say, and one last thing on DEI. What I want to say about DEI, as y'all know, that it did not benefit Black people the most. What did benefit Black people was institutions like, for instance, the school I graduated from, Columbia, deciding that they were going to put in EEOC programs or other types of programs that didn't fall under the federal government as such, quota programs or whatever, or DEI programs. And what they did was they looked for diverse candidates. And you can find diversity in any kind of way. They never called it diversity, but they said, this person is from this kind of a background, and they could bring in what it'd be like to grow up in Brooklyn, New York, and Marcy Projects, or they can bring in, they got a great style of writing, or they've done so much charity work, and they do that with white applicants as well. So you could just do it and bring in more diversity without calling it diversity. So I think schools are just going to have to get smarter or more creative about how they start to bring in a school population that represents communities that they'd like to have sitting at the table. So, and thank y'all guys for taking my call for so long. I'm going to hang up now.
One of the things I'm concerned about,
much, Renee.
I think that, thanks so much. I think one of the things, they're trying to frame it as, hey, this is not going to be earth shattering in terms of, some of the moves that the administration is making in terms of anti-DEI. But if you look at Christopher Rufo, who is one of the architects for demonizing diversity, equity, inclusion, his goal is to make sure that there's no use of race whatsoever. So he's going to try to use the Justice Department to investigate. He's going to use these investigative agencies. He even indicated that he is going to try to subpoena information about LSAT scores, SAT scores. So this is really going to be bad. And I think that they're putting a favorable spin on it in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. But my view of the world is they're trying to put us pre-1964 Civil Rights Act. I think that's going to be the impact unless we really get busy and really try to oppose this stuff.
We should all be on red alert. We're witnessing before our very eyes the tearing down of our constitutional democracy. And so the question becomes, what do you do? We know that yesterday we saw that February 24th was declared as at least one of many economic boycotts, where yesterday there was an initiative to not purchase anything yesterday. What do you think about the economic boycott that was held yesterday, colleagues? And do you think that these types of actions will make an impact?
Well, in response to that, historically, economic boycotts have been very effective. Right. And let me explain why. Let's first talk about some of the things that been in the news, became a big political issue. That was illegal immigration, right? So illegal immigration became the topic, although everybody seems to forget that America is a country of immigrants. And we know what happened to the American Indian Native Americans. But what most folks don't know is that illegal immigrants pay taxes just like American citizens. The only difference is they're not entitled to any of the benefits like Social Security. They couldn't get unemployment benefits during the pandemic. They put into our national treasury billions of dollars. They're one of the key factors in our retirement account. So in other words, without the input of that $89 billion into that tax system, we have a further deficit in our retirement funding. So this whole idea about the attack on diversity and inclusion, things like that, it's just bad, because you look at the numbers in terms of how big of an economic impact diversity has. Make no mistake about it, we need diversity. We're not going to survive as a country just on the fact of one race of people. We're a country of immigrants.
And that goes to the whole reason why there was civil service reform, that, there were only people that were getting jobs that were connected to a presidential campaign. And as a consequence of not having diverse opinions, the country wasn't well served. So, we're hopeful that, there'll be, more claims before the Merit System Protection Board, more claims, that are adjudicated by administrative law judges. And then we just remind people why we have the Merit System Protection Board and how bad it was in our country, before we basically said that we're going to have a career federal servants as opposed to new people coming in every 4 years. It's not in anybody's best interest. It's not everybody's best interest in terms of the issue of diversity to have everybody from New York or have everyone from California. The whole idea is to give a wide section of our community an opportunity, because you're going to get to a better result if you have different perspectives.
Yeah, and I disagree a little with Renee. I do believe that the civil rights movement and other programs that have gotten more of us into law school and medical schools and jobs than the past, than depending upon the boss's power to hire whom he wants. I don't think that works. We need something in the law that requires a certain amount of diversity and inclusion. So I do believe that those laws have helped us. As Marlon stated earlier, I think he did, I got into Hastings, University of California, Hastings Law School because of Equal Opportunity Program or the education program at the time. Would not have gotten there otherwise. So I don't know. I think I'm an example of that. February the 28th, yesterday, Vanita, I think I didn't spend my dollars in anything yesterday. I started to go to a restaurant and I said, I don't know who owns that restaurant. No, I'm not going. So seriously, that was last night. So we ate dinner at home. So I'm hoping, as Nate stated, I think boycotts have always been effective. How effective, I don't know. And lastly, I don't know how it got the name of Al Sharpton's boycott. My last point.
Well, but I think the boycotts are a good idea, but I think we got to pivot and create our own project, 25 plan, and then pivot and say, hey, we're going to boycott strategically, but we're also going to support Black businesses and we're going to encourage people to start their own Black business. We are so talented as a people. We can be, smart, start these small businesses and we can employ our own people because that's going to be our future. The reality of it is going to be, in terms of reading the tea leaves, is that you're not going to get a lot of enforcement in terms of discrimination claims, in terms of, having barriers placed to allow you to go into jobs. So what I would like to see us do is start publishing lists of attorneys or dentists or Black doctors or Black business owners, landscapers, caterers. I think that's our future. Uh, People are of the mistaken notion that these large companies are the people that employ most people. No, the statistics are that most people are employed by small business. So, in my humble opinion, we got to pivot. Support individuals. In our community, encourage people to create more small businesses.
I agree. Does the
I,
NBA still print that type of thing for the Bar Association, Nate or Vanita? The list of Black lawyers around the country and the areas of practice that they're in. I remember years ago, I thought they had that publication.
Years ago, we did have a directory, and our
Right.
most recent efforts, Nathaniel can speak to because he had led a project to update that directory so that we would have a current list of African American attorneys by practice areas nationally.
Right. But it's no longer printed.
It hasn't been updated in a very long time. Attorney Lee?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not updated, and unfortunately, the project did not. Uh, it wasn't completed after I was no longer president. The next leader didn't follow up on the project, and I think it's necessary. And here's why: we don't have a publication in America that lists or identify the uh, Black lawyers, about 75 to 80,000 Black lawyers and judges across the country. And we need that for a number of reasons. But the second thing, though, is that back to this boycott idea, I want to make something real clear. Boycotts are very effective because one of the things that people understand is economic. The idea of institutional slavery was so popular among racists because it was free labor. They made money off these slaves. And so it's been a monetary grab all along. So now, going forward, if we are going to boycott, I think that we need to have a better strategy. Like, for example, we need to target a specific corporation. First, we make demands. The way we should do this, we want you to do 1, 2, 3, 4. If you don't do that, then we're going to do factor X. So I think that we first should negotiate with some corporation to get them to reverse their policies. If they don't, then we should target an individual corporation. Now, once we start, our idea is that they're going to go bankrupt, to set as an example.
And we
So
know
we
that
just shouldn't do it to start it. We got to do it to the logical end, and we're going to send a message. If you don't do X, Y, Z, then you shouldn't be in business. And that's the approach that I would take.
absolutely it has to be strategic. And Milton, this boycott, it was kind of unclear who was sponsoring it. I think it was a number of different groups, but specifically, the boycott was organized by a nonpartisan grassroots organization called the People's Union USA. And it encouraged American shoppers to keep their wallets closed for 24 hours on February 28th. But we saw back in 1955 with the Montgomery bus boycott, it ran from December to December 1955 to December 1956. So it ran for an entire year. And of course, that was one of the pivotal uh, events undergirding our civil rights movement.
Okay. Okay, but one-day boycotts do work too, don't they, Vanita?
I think absolutely. I think we'll see. I think we'll see the impact. There's some that say that one day, it's not all that impactful because the next day you go to shop and it's basically only a blip. And so we'll see. And there are a series of these boycotts that are going to be held moving forward.
Okay.
Hey, one final comment on this. I want to make this clear to everyone. You need to have a better plan than just simply to boycott. We need to make specific demands on certain corporations. So, in other words, if you want to not buy goods from Target because you think they're not supporting DI, we need to ascertain exactly what Target is doing in terms of their hiring practices. And then we need to do a global approach. Like, for example, what are they giving to minority nonprofits? What are they giving to what are their hiring practices? What are their promotion practices? What percentage of their workforce are African American? And so you have to go through each of these process, and then once we educate ourselves what they're doing, and then if we don't like it, then we make demands of changes. So in other words, do you have blacks on the board of directors? Do you invest in black businesses? You go through the whole litany of things, and then if the corporation don't agree, then you boycott the corporation to the ultimate conclusion. But then at the same time, you need to get a secondary partner, folks. You have to get a partner with another company that does a similar type product and get them to agree to your demands. And then you can shift the business from company A to company B. So now you've shown economically your muscle power. You can show that you could develop an enterprise and you could destroy one. That will send a stronger message.
But to follow up on what Marvin said earlier about supporting African-American businesses across the board, like lawyers and doctors and other professionals, maybe we need to look at some type of a national blue book, as they used to have in the old days, type of thing, so that we can go back to supporting one another as opposed to just worried about what we give to the man. So I think that would be helpful.
We had a book like that dating back years. I think they called it the Green Book. And we've had several efforts. I will call her name in the next on the next show that had developed a just a whole initiative around Buy Black. And we need to dust off that work, update it, and disseminate it nationally. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Attorney Lee. You just stated a blueprint for exercising our economic power moving forward.
Well, I said blue book, I meant green book. The car is blue book.
We'll call it the Black Book moving forward.
All right.
Well, listen, I want to announce that next week I'm going to take a vacation week. And by the time we return back in 2 weeks, I want to have a blueprint so we can start articulating as to how we address this problem. This is a problem. And just doing this random boycott, we got to have a better organized plan. So we're going to start this process in a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, all our listeners, send your ideas and ideas you think would be helpful, and we'll appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, our important guests. Also, I had some interruption today because I'm at the Democratic Slating Convention, and I've had a power failure. But thank you all for listening to our show. We look forward to talking to you in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.